All right, hello and welcome everyone to yet another edition of Metals Hub Talks, a webinar series here at Metals Hub, where we discuss and explore the intersection of raw materials and digitalization. I'm your host, Samir Jabber, and today we will talk about building liquidity in the battery recycling market in Europe. We will explore the challenges in today's market, how transparency ensures price discovery, and what a mature market should deliver. And to do that, I have two great guests to help us understand this landscape a bit more. First, we have Dr. Frank Jackal. So Frank is a co-founder and managing director of Metals Hub, through which he is bringing digitalization to the metals and mining industry. Before founding Metals Hub, Frank held senior commercial leadership roles, including global head of marketing and sales at CMOC and head of sales for Ferroalloys at Anglo American. And Frank brings deep industry and market expertise to the platform's development. Frank, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks, Samir, for the introduction.
All right, and next we have Mr. Maciej Mikulic. Now, Maciej is the Managing Director and Chief Operating Officer at Royal Bees Recycling, and he's responsible for operational leadership and commercial execution at the company. He brings extensive experience to commodity trading and operations, supporting scalable and disciplined growth across the business. Pleasure to have you with us, Maciej.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you very much for invitation to this webinar.
Awesome. We're glad to have you. Now, before we jump into the discussion, just a bit of housekeeping to everybody in attendance today. In order for you to communicate with us and join the conversation, there are two sections at the bottom right of your screen, which are the chat and the questions section. As you already know, chat is just where you can introduce yourself, let us know where you're joining us from, what you're expecting from this conversation, and just join the discussion as we go. And the question section is where you can share your questions, and we'll get to them by the end of the discussion in our dedicated Q&A session. All right, and I won't take too much of the time. Let's jump straight into the discussion. Because there's a lot of things that I'd like to discuss with you guys, and I think it's a very important aspect that we start with understanding what the market reality is today. So we know that Europe's battery recycling volumes are growing, and the market is still often described as an early market, and we see tradings they remain relatively fragmented, opaque. So Maciej, from your operational perspective, what does that actually look like in practice? Where do you see the biggest structural weaknesses in today's market, particularly when we talk about liquidity, when we talk about maybe pricing transparency, we talk about commercial realities of materials like black mass, for instance?
From my perspective as a CEO at Royal Bees Recycling, where we focus on recycling post-production waste from EV battery manufacture, the lack of the whole value chain is the hydro process. So we really don't know, when we started recycling post-production waste, how to prepare properly the black mass that can be used in the hydro process. It was in 2020. We looking for this partners which can help us to develop this quality which is needed to the hydro process. And still, after the 6 years, we still see that the European market is missed this hydro process.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, Frank, could you add to that? When we talk about missing hydro process operationally, how are we seeing it on the market side in terms of maybe transparency to pricing, because these things go hand in hand?
Yeah, I mean, the hydro process is, of course, only one step in the value chain for a functioning market in Europe. And I mean, as Maciej pointed out, what is lacking at the moment is this end-to-end operational value chain in Europe. I mean, that starts with while we do have battery collection, while we do have actually producers of black mass, there is very limited capacity actually of refining then the black mass into lithium carbonate or nickel, cobalt, whatever valuable material is in there. And partly that is also because there is no real functioning price discovery and no liquidity in the market out there. I'm a strong believer in price, and that price actually is the right signal for allocating capital and building capacity. And if we don't have a functioning market that is liquid without the necessary transparency, well, it also has an impact on money that is available for recyclers. It has an impact on optimization. So how should a black mass producer, so a recycler of batteries, really optimize their production in terms of a certain quality if the price is really lacking and if they don't really understand what the pricing means to them? All business cases are somewhat difficult in this regard, and I think these are really the things that are missing. So on the one side, there's a step in the value chain missing. On the other side, we don't have really pricing signals, a liquid market to attract investment and to make sure that capital is allocated in an efficient and effective manner.
That's a great introduction into the discussion, and we get to liquidity and price discovery in a minute. But before we go there, I'd like to look into your perspective, Maciej, as a recycler, looking at the operational realities that are shaping the market functions today. We see companies dealing with environmental regulation. We see there are different battery formats, right, from prismatic to pouch to cylindrical cells, etc. And as Frank was talking about the qualities, where there's a variation in qualities in output. How do these factors influence pricing decisions, trading decisions? How does it affect how you approach your processes?
To be honest, it's not help. The first point, the environmental law. To be honest, we don't have this industry yet. We are still at the beginning of the journey to build the circular economy around the lithium-ion batteries in Europe. But what we have really restricted law. And this law is dedicated to whom? Look, to move from Poland, black mass, to Germany or to France or to Spain, we need to make the notification. And companies like mine will waiting from 6 months to 12 months. And at the same time, we need to wait when we want to export abroad European Union to Japan, to Korea. And we see the different prices. Of course, the better price is around Asia market, but how it's gonna help to build the market in Europe if we have the same inside the Europe, the same law as we have abroad European Union? It's not help. It's not easy. We need to wait to sell our product inside European Union. This is strange. This is strange. Second point, as you mentioned, there are different types of the chemistry using in the lithium-ion batteries, mostly NMC and LFP. Let's concentrate on this one. We see that many companies building one line dedicated to all types of the lithium-ion batteries and all types chemistry. So they use the same technology to process NMC and LFP. They use the same technology to process cylindric cells, pouch cells, prismatic cells. We know that this cells goes to the modules. Nowadays, some OEMs and gigafactory use cells to pack. And to all this, and we know that the size of these cells are also different. So you see, we have at least 10 variations of the input material, and you have one line dedicated to process all of this kind of material. And don't forget about the post-production waste. So you cannot expect that after this process, you will have homogeneous black mass. This is impossible. So this is the bullet point, I think, in the Europe industry nowadays, and we see that few companies bankrupt which were responsible for the mechanical process and prepared material for the hydro process. And of course, the third point: if we don't have hydro process in European Union, how we can transparent build our own business in the mechanical treatment? We don't have liquidity, we don't have transparent, and we don't know how we can estimate the value of the black mass at the end. So in the whole business plan, when you consider to invest in the lithium-ion batteries, how you calculate at the end how much is worth the black mass at the end, and what kind of impurities influence if the price go up or down at the end. We don't know it. We can see on the market that we have available black mass where the content of copper and aluminum have from 5 to even 10%. So how much is worth this kind of black mass? And how much is the same chemistry black mass with the impurities less than 1%? We don't know it. After the assay, we know it, but before, we don't know it.
That's a great point. That's a great point. I mean, Frank, if I can bring you in, maybe if we look at the other materials that we've seen traded on MetalshubTalks, have we seen a similar challenge when it comes to moving from sort of the opaque scenario to a bit more of a more transparent setup? What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I mean, this kind of material is not unique. Of course, black mass in itself is a product that only with more and more lithium-ion batteries coming up is becoming actually a traded material. Nevertheless, the challenge about pricing something like that is not unique to black mass. So there are different materials out there that have had a very similar challenge in the past. If you think, for instance, about stainless steel scrap. Stainless steel scrap also consists of different valuable elements inside this scrap. So it's the nickel content, it's the chrome content, it's the molybdenum content, and all of that needs to be priced. However, this is of course an input material that's been used by the stainless steel industry for decades. So they have experience in pricing, they have established pricing mechanisms, and they have established pricing transparency around that. And this is something that's been regularly traded on MetalshubTalks, and it contributes to more price transparency. So for buyers of this material, it's very clear what's the value, how much, how can they price it. They can easily factor that into their business case, and the same for those that are actually providing this recycled stainless steel scrap to the stainless steel industry. So the challenge is the same. However, what we see now, of course, in the battery material industry is it's, as you said earlier, Samir, it's a relatively new industry. It's early stage. It's fast growing. I mean, we're talking about compound annual growth rates of almost 20%. Yeah. And new pricing standards need to be established. But if we don't do that, this is really hampering growth. So more pricing transparency, more liquid trading would actually help the entire industry to grow faster, but also more sustainably, and not bank and maybe on certain processes which then in the end are not profitable.
Well, since you mentioned that, let me double click a bit on liquidity. So what does, to help everybody understand it properly, what does liquidity actually enable that bilateral trading does not? We talk about price discovery a lot about this concept across different materials and in case of black mass as well. But if we look at liquidity, how does it develop? Does it naturally merge with volume? Does it require deliberate market design, a certain type of participation? And what is it? What type of impact do you see that you don't see in bilateral trading?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, what's liquidity in general? Let's define that. I think this is usually a financial term used in stock exchanges or financial markets, where it actually says how much of a certain derivative or a financial product is being traded on a transparent platform. If you compare that, for instance, to shares or stock trading, you've got illiquid shares, so those where actually hardly anything is being traded, and those ones that are very liquid and where you have a lot of price points, a lot of trades going on within a certain time frame. And of course, the difference between liquid trading on a platform versus bilateral trading is quite clear, because liquid trading creates very reliable pricing information. Nobody would ever buy shares of Apple if they didn't know where the share price is. You wouldn't go and ask your neighbor, hey, what price did you buy Apple shares last week? If there wasn't a clear information coming from a stock exchange. But that's at the moment reality, of course, in black mass. There is no real price transparency. There are not enough data points. Why? Because a lot of this is actually traded bilaterally or even on long-term contracts, which kind of immediately withdraw liquidity from the spot market. So, second part of your question is how does it emerge? How does it develop? Well, first of all, I think the industry needs to recognize that there's a need for it. And I think that's something that in the various discussions we had with people in the industry, everybody agrees that something is missing there, that there's too much uncertainty and not enough knowledge about where the prices are. So this acknowledgement needs to then lead to commitment of people saying, hey, we want to actively participate in the market, making sure that there is market liquidity, that people can price this material accordingly. And you need to, of course, a proper system in place that can cover the complexity of this material. And this is then how, over time, with a growing market, also liquidity grows. And with liquidity growing, you will have much more reliable pricing information. You will have much more reliable allocation of and effective allocation of capital also in this industry.
And one word can I add?
Please go ahead.
The liquidity and transparency of market will help everybody. From the beginning, the OMEs and Gigafactory can evaluate how much is worth their scrap. Sometimes they are charged, sometimes someone pays them for the same material. And in my opinion, they don't know why. If they have liquidity and transparent market, they will know that if you have content, valuable metal inside, someone can pay you. So liquidity will help everybody in this market. The same story will be from our side. I can estimate the value of the scrap, and then I can estimate how much is worth the black mass at the end. And I can easily calculate my profit, my margin for the recycling process. So we need to do this in the Europe market. And we are doing this together with MetalshubTalks, of course.
Agreed. That's a good point. I mean, I think speaking of liquidity, and to make sure there is no misconception when it comes to when we talk about a liquid market, people might think that, oh, does that mean I'm dismissing my relationships that I've been setting up with, with the companies in the market, and I'm just relying on market that's showing me or dashboard that's showing me numbers. So to eliminate that misconception, first of all, where do relationships come into play, and where does liquid market come into play? And in your experience, or in your knowledge of this, what builds trust faster? Do we expect trust to be built early on? Do we expect trust to be built or with data later down the line? How do you see this setup? And I'll start with you, Maciej.
We need to develop both relationship and transparency and liquidity. But from my perspective, the most important at the beginning is the relationship. If you have background, if you have some experience, it's going to help you to build the transparent and liquidity market. I will share with you my experience together with Aurubis in 2021. I offered them the copper granulate because we learn how to process post-production waste, because we are in the good place and the right time. You know that in Poland was the first gigafactory run in the big scale. So we have a lot of post-production scrap, and we learn how to process lithium-ion batteries step by step when the post-production scrap came from factory. So we learn how to properly process the anode material to recover almost 99% copper granulate or copper foil from the anode material. And with this copper granulate, I go directly to Aurubis and explain them that, look, I started process anode material. This is something new on our market. This is first gigafactory in the big scale produce the anode. From this material, I recover copper granulate. Can you test it? And we spent almost 2 years to achieve the goal with the quality which have 95% copper granulate, which we produce from the anode scrap. And this is, we spent almost 2 years to learn each other how to produce the best quality. And I have background from the electronic scrap, and I deliver a lot of copper to Aurubis. That's why helped me. My experience helped me to convince them to try to learn how to process properly. And we still cooperate. And nowadays, yes, we can sign a long-term contract. And the same story we have with MetalshubTalks. We met with Frank in September 2025. At the beginning, his teams phoned to me and tried to arrange the meeting. I refused, so I'm really sorry. But after conference, when I heard and I saw a presentation which Frank made on the conference, I thought I need to meet with this guy and need to talk. And we start meeting, we start talking, we start building the relationship, and you will see that in next 2 months we'll announce something really good. What happened on the circular economy with the really hard material, which is graphite, and together with MetalshubTalks, we have planned to do something together. But at the beginning, there was the relationship. Then it will be liquidity and transparency, long-term cooperation, I hope.
Agreed. And I agree that relationships early on is a crucial aspect. But Frank, if I can bring you in on the idea of standards, and I can even see one of our attendees shared a comment of exactly that. The liquidity follows standardization. So how do standards come into play in this setup, and what kind of effect does it have on relationships in this sort of balance between the two?
Yeah, I mean, as Maciej pointed out, the relationship is always the start of something new, and we cannot develop and do research without a relationship there. But in order to scale something, and I also looked at the chat, David pointed it out here as well. In order to scale, you need to have some kind of standardization. And liquidity comes from standardization. And it's not only that that you need to understand what's been traded, you need to then really cluster it and so on. So again, this is something that we've seen in other materials, but standards will help the industry to scale. So what we need to do is, first of all, create a certain transparency. With transparency, you will see what kind of grades, what kind of specifications, what kind of chemicals actually work better and which ones don't work so well. So in effective terms, who's paying for what more and who's paying for what less. And ultimately, that will then inform everyone to say, hey, okay, I can tweak my operations to this kind of standard for NMC batteries or LFP batteries. And with it, you create more pricing transparency in these different clusters, in these different grades going forward. And I think it's not something that happens overnight. So where you can hope somebody just puts out a certain standard and this is going to be now the right standard going forward. I mean, this is sometimes the EU approach. We regulate something before we actually do it. What we need to do here is let the market decide. And I think this is something where we've got a great opportunity ultimately. It's still a growing industry where we can jointly as the industry define, okay, which kind of grades, which kind of chemistries work the best.
Fully agree. Let the market decide. That's a great slogan to use there. But yeah, let's look back. So we've talked about operational challenges. We've talked about how the need for price transparency and how a liquid market enables that. And we've talked about relationships and standards in that sense. The thing that still remains is, and it's a very important aspect, and that's financing. Now, when we look at investments and we look at financing decisions, how does an opaque market or market opacity affect financing and investment decisions in today's market? And how could transparent trading change that? And the question is to you both. I'll start with you, Maciej, if I may.
From my perspective and my experience with looking for funding, the Polish market is on the early stage. The venture capitals don't have so much cash to invest in industrial technology, which we are. Because of the relationship, I convince my business partner, Mateusz Mroczka family, to invest in our company. So we have private investors. And yes, because my experience, they trust me, they believe in this project, and still we grow up. We founded another company where we are building the battery energy storage system from second life modules. And we are really doing this. We have really strong team. And back to the topic about the market. Look, it's really difficult, from my perspective, convince venture capital to invest in recycling business if you don't have this market yet. So how much is worth your business plan or Excel sheet when you calculate the price from what? The price which you achieve from the black mass. If you don't have this liquidity and transparent market, the venture capital need to only trust, need to believe. You don't have real data how much is worth the black mass, because this is the key of the business of lithium-ion batteries. The volume which is inside the lithium-ion battery is from 50% to 85%, depend on the scrap. Of course, including the post-production scrap. So how you can estimate how much is worth the black mass at the end when you want to sell to the hydro process? What is the quality of this black mass if you have various input material? How you can estimate properly the business plan and the Excel sheet? How you can estimate the revenue? We have this experience because I'm in the recycling business since 2008. So my founders trust me. And nowadays, everything is working perfect. Royalbees is profitable company. As we can see on the market, not so many companies in this industry are profitable, but yes, we are, because our business model is to develop modular installation dedicated each scrap. This is how we win in this market. This is all from my side.
That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. Frank, yeah, if I can go to you.
Very happy to kind of put more emphasis on what Marche said. I mean, there's a reason why markets with clear pricing signals work more effectively, grow faster, and are much more efficient than markets without clear pricing signals. And that's exactly the reason, because price is a very good guiding point or principle or signal to A, optimize your own production, B, also create enough transparency for financial investors to invest into that. Just put yourself into the shoes of a financial investor. You can tell them many times how important recycling and closed loops and everything is, and that this is the future, etc. But when they do not know exactly whether your business case flies in terms of, is that the price that they can achieve, is that price justified, etc., they will immediately discount your business case. So the more reliable data you can actually provide to the financial investors, the more trustworthy you appear and your business case appears to them. So opaque markets always struggle to attract investment. There's also a reason why base metal markets like nickel, copper, aluminium, there's a lot of money flowing into that. Why? Because there are very clear and transparent prices out there. The LME is pricing those materials. So investors know exactly what the return is. They can look at the data and they can trust the data. And that's not the case when it comes to battery recycling yet. So then you need to heavily rely on relationships and that somebody believes in you, in your business case. But the most convincing fact for everyone is always available, transparent data. And as Marche pointed out, that will help everyone in this industry. So we need to move this industry as quickly as possible from this very opaque element of pricing to something which is much more transparent. And that will help also regulators to introduce the right laws, the right regulation to funnel materials, to funnel investment, etc. Without price, etc., everyone is blind. So I think it's a must if we really want to make this a successful industry in Europe.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, I still have one question for both of you, but before I do so, I'll invite everyone in attendance. If you have any questions to Frank and Maciej, please do ask them in the question section. We'll get to them in the Q&A session right after this. So my final question is sort of a forward outlook to you both. So let's say 5 years from now, if you look back to today, what do you think will distinguish companies that have actively helped build liquidity from those who have waited on the sidelines? Frank, you can go first if you like.
Yeah, I mean, from my experience, of course, there's always a first mover and also second mover advantage, because if you are in the business, if you are actually somebody who is already experiencing and optimizing based on clear pricing signals, etc., and actually helping to build this market, you have adapted already. If you are only late to the party and you do that in 5 years' time, everybody else has already a kind of a optimized production. They know exactly who the customers are. They know how to tweak their processes to make more money with their material. And also for the buyers, they know exactly what kind of money they have to pay for which material, etc. So I think there is a very clear advantage at being part of it rather than actually waiting for it to happen and then joining in. It doesn't mean that you can't do that in 5 years' time, but I think admittedly, we need in a growing industry those ones that are actively contributing and that want to learn, because you also have an influence on what kind of standards are out there. Yeah.
Great points. Masha, anything to add?
Yeah, I agree in 100% with Frank. We need to build this market transparent and liquidity. It helps everybody. And what we see that is going to happen, but I think we can move much more faster. Of course, bureaucracy doesn't help. The stricted law, environmental law doesn't help. But we need to do this. We need to do this if we want to build the first circular economy, independence in the building the lithium-ion batteries, and if we want to be independent from China market, especially. We need to do this.
Fully agree. Thank you so much for your insights. It's been fantastic so far. I think I learned a lot already. And we'll move to the Q&A in a bit, but just before we jump into Q&A, to everybody in attendance, if you'd like more information about what MetalsHub is doing to build a European platform for raw materials from battery recycling, you can check out our latest article on the topic. We'll share it in the chat so you can have a read after this. And you can always check out our webinars going forward. We have another one soon enough also. I think David and my colleagues share that as well in the chat. So you can always check these out. You can follow our updates there. And thank you for everybody so far who has shared their insights in the chat. It's been great. Now, while the attendees share their questions, I'd like to maybe start the Q&A session with something that we hear from market participants quite a lot, and it's more about if you had to prioritize one step the industry should take in the next 12 months to improve transparency in the market, what would it be? I mean, my answer would be just join the MetalsHub initiative. But yeah, if there's anything specific that there's one specific step that needs to be, the first step to move this needle forward, what would that be? Anything?
Look, I'm happy to start there. And of course, I mean, we haven't started this initiative because we think this is just a nice idea. We have started it simply because we believe that this is a necessary step in there. I mean, a transparent market doesn't overcome any kind of technical challenges. We all know that. But it helps if a certain amount of volume is being traded. It helps to establish, first of all, what are the pricing standards for those materials. Yeah, because you can learn from others. While, of course, the individual pricing of a company A with a company B is always confidential, it still helps to actually establish a certain framework and guidance actually for others, and to establish this kind of first framework, grading framework, but also pricing framework for this to happen. And we can structure that, of course, on the platform with our technology, making sure that there are certain standards then applied. So I think this is a very clear step forward, and it will help then also, because I read also in some of the comments that there are also, of course, political challenges to overcome. If we can create this industry network where people are trading, it also helps to kind of build some pressure towards political decision makers, because you can point to that market and say, this is the market, this is how it works, this is what's been traded there. Now, regulators, please, we need to overcome this hazardous waste regulation. We need to find a better solution there in order to boost volumes, or we need to do this, or we need to do that. If everybody is trying that on their own, we will not succeed.
I agree with Frank, and I think the first point is the environmental law, that now everything is as a hazardous waste. It's okay, I agree with that, but what for we need the notification inside the European Union? This is what I don't understand. So it means that the Polish authorities need to check the German authorities. So we don't trust each other. The authorities don't trust each other. It means that the Polish authorities make a wrong decision that they give Royal Bees permission to recycling. What we need to check? Why we need to wait 6 months, at least 6 months, sometimes even 12 months, to move from one country inside European Union to another country European Union? This is not help build the market. This is the first point. And the second point, as we started, I mentioned that there is no existing in the big scale the hydro process. And I understand is that this is not so much black mass available on the market, but this will help if the hydro process will start to run. It will help to build transparent and liquidity market. There's 2 points.
That's a great point, Maciej. Thank you for sharing that. I got a question here, and maybe that's a question to you, Frank. Is there are these materials already being traded on the MetalshubTalks platform?
Yes. So I mean, we had already some trades of black mass on MetalshubTalks. Of course, that was experimental stage, but technically it works, and it works very well. So there's no reason not to do it via the platform. And also when it comes to the refined materials like lithium carbonate, nickel, etc., they've been frequently traded already, not from a recycled source, but actually from primary sources, from mining. So again, there's no reason that it doesn't work for recycling. The great thing about using a platform is you can actually then also show and demonstrate your carbon footprint. And for buyers, actually, it also fulfills your need of X% of recycled material in your in your final product. So I think there are huge benefits also in terms of supply chain transparency that you can utilize. But yes, long answer for a short question. Yes, we have been trading those materials in the past already.
Great. I'll try to squeeze 1 or 2 more questions within our time. There's an interesting question to you, Maciej, if I may. We talked about different chemistries in batteries, right? Do you think these differences in battery chemistries are likely to slow standardization, or is the industry converging in a certain sense?
Look, we have 2 different types of chemistry and 2 different types of the process of the hydro process. So it means general, how is built the maybe we should start first at this, how is built nowadays the raw materials or the general materials recycling process in general in Europe. So we have scrap, good quality, we deliver to smelter, for example, copper smelter, and the furnace is responsible to prepare material to the hydro process. And we have in the copper smelter after furnace, we have hydro process electrification where the smelter produce cathode with the 4 nines. Yes. With the lithium-ion batteries, the mechanical process is responsible for preparing good quality material for hydro process. So it means that we don't have a furnace which prepared material, constant material, homogeneous material to the hydro process. So the responsibility is on the mechanical treatment. And it's not so easy to control the dust, to control the fines, to control impurities. That's why, and this is the reason why we should build dedicated line to each chemistry, to not mix this chemistry. If we have hydro process dedicated NMC, the first bath is prepared to remove something from NMC material. If we have the LFP material, So it means that you don't have cobalt, nickel, but you can find the impurities. The rest can be the same. But the chemistry it will be another type. I'm not the chemistry guy, but this is what I learned. So this is the advantage nowadays in the European market, to build dedicated mechanical treatment, which will be responsible to prepare good quality black mass to the hydro process.
That's a great point, Maciej. Now, we're almost over with the time, but I'd just like to thank you both, Frank and Maciej, for providing fantastic insight. It's been really great, and I think the messaging that you're trying to deliver here is extremely important. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for allowing me to have this conversation with you, and thank you to everybody who joined us here today on MetalshubTalks. But this conversation does not end here. This is just the beginning. We will have another similar session in early April, so you can see the link in the chat. Please do check that out and join us then. We'll continue the discussion then, and of course, we'll always be available for conversations with you if you want to contact us. And as I mentioned earlier, there's a blog post that we shared. You can have a read there to see what we're trying to do here at MetalsHub when it comes to the better recycling market. Thank you to our experts, and I wish everybody a beautiful day ahead. We'll keep in touch.
Thank you very much, everyone, for joining. Thanks for the great moderation from you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you much. Bye-bye.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.